Okay, folks, ready for another deep dive. Today we're tackling a question that, well, it's been debated forever, basically. Should we separate art from the artist? Like, it's one of those things everyone has an opinion on.
It really is one of those questions, isn't it?
We're going to try to get to the bottom of it, or at least explore it by looking at this excerpt called Matinha Pashtirulda, which seems to be all about, it's the exact question. And I think, we all have artists we love, right? Like musicians, authors, filmmakers, whatever. But what happens when you learn something about their personal lives? Like something maybe not so great.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tough one.
Does that then change how we view their art? Does it taint it, or can we still enjoy it? I don't know.
Right. And that's, I think, what's so interesting about this excerpt is it doesn't give you a straight answer. It's not like, here's the rule, do this. It actually brings up arguments for both sides.
Yeah.
And kind of makes you think about, okay, well, where do I stand on this?
Yeah.
What do I think?
Yeah. So for example, it talks about how an artist's actions could be absolutely awful, right? But their work itself might still hold artistic value. That separate from who they are as a person, their work is still good. But then it also acknowledges that sometimes an artist's actions are so intertwined with their art that it's impossible to really separate the two.
Yeah, you can't really untangle it, can you?
Right, exactly.
It all becomes one. And it also, what I think is interesting is that it brings up specific examples. It makes you really think about, okay, what about this person? What about that person? How do you grapple with the work of someone like Caravaggio?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing painter.
Total rock star.
But also known for brawling, even murder.
Yeah, a bit of a hot mess.
So how do you think about his art, knowing that about his life? Or what about, more contemporary examples? We're not going to name names here, but I'm sure we can all think of filmmakers or musicians who have been accused of some pretty serious offenses. Does that then change how we listen to their music or watch their films?
It's a good question. And thinking about that whole context thing, right?
Yeah.
With Caravaggio, he lived at a very different time.
Right. Hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, really different world.
So does that matter? Should we view art differently if it was made during a time when societal norms were completely different than they are today?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And the excerpt does touch on that a little bit. It kind of highlights how applying our present day morality to figures from the past.
Yeah.
It can be tricky. It doesn't mean we condone their actions.
Yeah.
But it does mean that understanding the context in which they lived is important. And also, I think this excerpt brings up another point which I think is interesting, the idea of intent.
Oh, yeah. Intent, that's a big one.
Did the artist deliberately set out to create something harmful or offensive?
Yeah.
That can play a role as well. Right. And it made me think about this debate I saw online recently about this comedian. I won't say their name, but their jokes. Some people found them really offensive, but then other people were defending them, saying oh, well, the intent wasn't to harm anyone. It was just to, make people think, provoke thought.
Yeah.
But is that a valid defense, though? What do you think?
It's definitely something to consider. I mean, this is where I think things get really complicated because art is subjective. What one person finds offensive, another person might find insightful or funny or, moving or whatever. So how do you draw that line? Does the artist's intent even matter if the impact on some people is negative?
Right.
I don't know. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, it really is. And I guess then that brings up the question of okay, so let's say you appreciate a work of art, right?
Yeah.
A song, a painting, a book, whatever. But then you learn that the artist behind it has done something that you consider morally questionable. How do you reconcile those two things? What are your personal criteria, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it really depends on the situation. It's about kind of weighing the severity of their actions against the value that I personally find in their work. And honestly, sometimes I just choose not to engage with an artist's work at all if what they've done is just, is bad enough.
Yeah.
For me. But it is a deeply personal decision. And I think that's what this excerpt really highlights, is that there's not a right or wrong answer.
It is personal for sure.
It's your own values,
right.
Your own judgment.
But I think what you said earlier, too, about just being aware, right? Being informed.
Yes.
Doing your research.
Yeah.
Knowing who you're supporting with your time and your money when you engage with somebody's art.
Exactly. And I think it's okay to have different standards for different art forms as well. You might feel differently about a musician who's done something problematic versus a visual artist or an author, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about it like that.
It's all very nuanced.
Yeah, it is.
There's no easy answers.
No easy answers. So it really comes down to figuring out your own personal approach.
Exactly.
All right, so we've gone through some of the interesting points from Myth and Nepenthe, but what implications does this have for you as an art enthusiast? How do you navigate this complex landscape while remaining true to your own values?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that awareness is crucial. Be conscious of the conversations surrounding the artists you appreciate. Be informed about their lives and actions, and then make your own informed decision about how you want to engage or not engage with their work.
Yeah.
It's okay to have different standards for different art forms. You might feel differently about a musician with a problematic past versus a visual artist, for example.
That's a really good point. It's all about figuring out your own approach.
Yeah.
Awesome. So as you're out there exploring the world of art, think about, what piece of art has maybe made you grapple with this dilemma, a book, a film, a song, whatever. What criteria did you use to make your own judgment call?
Food for thought.
Food for thought. And that's a wrap on our deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.